This is Cincinnati Edition on 91.7 WVXU. I'm Lucy May. The National Association of Realtors agreed earlier this month to settle a lawsuit accusing the group of inflating real estate commissions. The settlement comes months after a federal jury ruled the industry group and several real estate companies conspired to inflate commissions on home sales. Joining me now to talk about the case and what it could mean for home buyers and the housing market as a whole are ERA Real Solutions Realty Associate Broker alrosser. Welcome back, Al.
Thank you.
And University of Cincinnati Lindner College of Business Professor of Real Estate, Gary Painter. Thanks for being here, Gary.
Happy to be here.
UC is a financial supporter of Cincinnati Public Radio. Gary, what were the allegations in this lawsuit? Break it down for us.
Well, I'll just mention a couple of things. I think the main allegation, as I take it from the consumer side, is that consumers didn't have full knowledge that they had the opportunity to negotiate with their realtor, their representation about what those rates might be. Rather, they were presented with a fixed rate from like the seller's perspective. They had to pay 6%. And even if that wasn't in practice a law, it wasn't the practice of the N.A.R. members and so forth, that was what individual consumers were experiencing. So that was one of the issues that in the lawsuit. And so with the settlement of the lawsuit, I think a lot of people will actually know that they have the ability to negotiate in ways that they didn't before. And I think over time there will be an evolution of real estate practices in terms of what representation means. Representation is a bundle of services provided to buyers and sellers, some of which the buyer probably wants and the seller probably wants, some of which they might not be as excited to pay for. And so I think we're going to see in that negotiation going forward, both with sellers and buyers, really a new set of services that buyers and sellers are going to want when they engage in a real estate transaction.
And Al, as I mentioned, there was this decision late last year that involved the N.A.R. and several real estate companies, and this more recent settlement with the National Association of Realtors. How big a deal is this settlement to the industry?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. The actual results of this settlement so far, because it still has to be signed off by the judge, but the effective rules that are going to be implemented in a few months, if the judge signs off on them, is really two details, right? Two technicality changes. As Mr. Painter mentioned, is that, sellers have always been able to negotiate. Commissions have always been negotiable. There really has been no standard, no regular, none of that. But we will no longer be able to indicate in the multiple listing service known as the MLS that sellers are offering a commission rate to a buyer's broker/agent. And so we can no longer put that in the system. We can still negotiate any commission rate, whether it's 6, 7, 5, 4, 3, whatever that is. And sellers can still offer commissions to a buyer broker. So those things are still in place. The technicality change is we just can no longer indicate that in the multiple listing service system. And the other one is that we have to now, the realtors have to now sign a buyer broker agreement with a buyer, which indicates what our duties are, what services we provide, also what commission we are charging for the services we are providing, so that buyers understand that and they agree to a certain amount, which also puts that buyer on the hook for that commission out of their own pocket if it's not going to be rolled into the price where the seller is paying it or however that's going to be in there. Then that becomes an additional out-of-pocket expense if that can't be worked out right in the transaction. So those are really the main two things. I mean, there's some other things as far as the amount of money being paid, but as far as rule changes and things that are going to affect the industry right now, those are the only two things. Many agents have already been using the buyer-broker agreement. And let me say this, license law does not require that. Okay, Ohio license law does not require the buyer agency agreement. The Realtors, which is a professional organization, right? Because people say a realtor license. That does not exist. There is no such thing as a realtor license. It is in Ohio, well, anywhere in the country, but in Ohio, we're a dual license state where you have a salesperson's license or a broker's license. And then if you decide to join the National Association of Realtors, that's when you can use the term realtor. So that's a misunderstanding in the world as well. But so the realtors then are saying, if you're going to be a member of the National Association of Realtors, we are now requiring you as a member to use this buyer agency agreement. Again, license law does not require that. So then that will be a decision that licensees have to make if they want to proceed. Now, in order to have access to the MLS, you have to be a realtor, at least right now.
Yeah.
And then MLS is how we access and cooperate, right, with properties listed by another brokerage, because literally our listing agreement is an exclusive right to sell, meaning that brokerage can sell it themselves in-house, not cooperate. But our MLS membership allows us to cooperate. And it used to be compensate. The compensation part is now changed.
Okay.
So just to give some background about how that works.
Yeah. We're talking about a landmark legal settlement that could have a big implication for home buyers in the housing market as a whole. You can join the conversation by calling 513-419-7100, or you can email talk@wvxu.org. Gary, I was just saying, hey, people could always negotiate. I don't know if people really knew that. I mean, I have to confess, I've bought and sold homes, and I thought, 5 or 6%, that's just the deal. That's just what happens. The NAR has said very clearly it's denied wrongdoing and said it has never set commissions. Do you think this has been characterized incorrectly in some of the coverage of this case, or have people just been confused? I mean, what do you think is at play here?
Well, I think that there's a part that's probably been mischaracterized within the coverage, because whenever there's something big that could be changing, we tend to, in media, kind of sensationalize things. But the simple fact is, from the majority of people who become first-time buyers or first-time sellers usually lack the knowledge that they have the opportunity to negotiate fees. And so when they're presented with a fee, whether it's the 3%, 6%, 5%, whatever it might be, they just say, okay, well, that's what you got to do. And so I think this is an opportunity when people who have been uninformed probably will become much more informed about what their rights are. And I'm not saying that people who, were licensed in various states were being dishonest in any way. They just weren't offering the full menu of choices that were there in many, many circumstances. Maybe there are some that always did, saying, and maybe even offered a menu of services. Like, if I do 1%, then this is what I'll provide you. We'll link to the MLS. If we do 2%, then this is what I'll provide you. But I don't think that there's been any formalization of what it meant to negotiate different rates and what sorts of services would be associated with those different rates. In my view, that's what we're going to see as an evolution of the real estate industry, so that people have a better sense of what service they're getting for what cost. And then that will, as I said, evolve over time into perhaps a new equilibrium. In total, it may or may not be less costly for buyers and sellers collectively, but in some cases it will.
So, Al, what will this change in terms of commissions? Do you think this will have more of an impact on real estate agents themselves, or on buyers or sellers? What do you think is going to happen with that?
So, that was part of, actually, Gary and I were talking briefly, as we were waiting to come in. And, that really remains to be seen, just as he kind of mentioned. It's hard to say. Part of my concern right now is the sensationalism of the media and the incorrect information as the premise of certain headlines I see, right, from major outlets, which is amazing to me. Oh, the standard 6% commission is going away. Well, what? Like that that statement doesn't even make sense.
Has that not been your standard?
No. I mean, I've made 1.5% on one side of the deal, 2%, 2.5%. I mean, that just It's based on relationships, honestly, right? I just negotiated a commission with a client who I'm listing their house, and this will be the 9th transaction within this family. That's a relationship I want to maintain and strengthen and continue. And so we negotiated a commission that was even better than when I sold his last house, right? Because of the relationship. And that has been a common behavior. Now, as we, our discussion earlier was, there are always people in every industry, just human behavior, who don't always do their jobs well, right? Who don't explain things well, who don't communicate well, right? And who may not have communicated the fact that things are negotiable. And I think Gary's perspective of now offering, hey, 1%, this is what I'll do, 2%, giving that menu of items has probably not been a common behavior in our industry. And this may evolve into that. So will it change things? I think so. But I think it's a bit irresponsible to make too many wild assumptions about where it's going to go. I think this will be an evolution of our industry, which is always a great thing. Humans are just always resistant to change, right? In anything. Even if it's, a new pair of shoes, we kind of think about it 2 or 3 times. That's not quite my style, right? So let me think about that, right? And so change is always challenging, and then it gets scary. And, there are news and media outlets who understand that, and it's called, what we call it now is clickbait, right? And so hopefully people who are reading and listening and really understanding can move past the sensationalism and the sizzle and the clickbait and really understand the basic nuance of what this is, and then see where it goes, right? See where it goes versus kind of predicting and influencing people's mindsets to take it in a place that maybe it would not have gone otherwise. And that's what scares me, is that people assume certain things and then it becomes a reality that may not have been the case, only because of the ridiculousness that's being put out here, right? So, yeah.
Well, we definitely don't just want sizzle. We want steak on Cincinnati Edition. So we're not just going for sizzle.
That's right.
Gary, what do you expect this to mean? I know it's still very much in evolving, and we don't know. You can't look in your crystal ball and say exactly what's going to happen quite yet. But what do you think this could mean for people selling homes? Do you think they'll still carry the cost of these commissions? What could it mean for home buyers? I think you mentioned, or one of you mentioned, that home buyers themselves might have to start paying some commission when they didn't necessarily before, except for it was sort of built into the price of the home. So how do you think that might all play out?
Well, I think it's helpful to kind of think about analogies of other industries that have had, kind of bundled prices that have then been unbundled and then sometimes rebundled. So I like to give the analogy in this case of cable. So cable was something that had, 100 different channels. We paid for the bundle. Maybe we only watched 4 of those channels. And then we had streamers come along. And then we had the opportunity to kind of say, you know what, I only want to pay for 2 channels and 2 streamers, and that's going to be my new bundle. I think what we're seeing here is that, for whether it's the buyer or the seller, I think there's going to be a negotiated kind of, again, set of services that different individuals want, in part based on their expertise in real estate. So if you're looking at a first-time home buyer, they might just say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing here. I want to make sure that I'm protected. I'm trying to buy my house. I'm going to go with somebody that can negotiate on my behalf to get the highest, or to get, in my case, as a buyer, the lowest price possible. And so that I can then, get into my home. But I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't have the connections in the industry. I don't know, which lender to choose, all those kinds of things. But for some people that have had multiple transactions, whether they're a buyer or a seller, I do have a sense that you're going to see an unbundling and say, you know what, maybe I only want to pay 1% to get access to the MLS. That's all I want from my seller side. That's all I want. I'm interested in paying. And then there will be other people that say, no, I want you to set up the open house. I want you to do this. I want you to do all of that. And then you'll see a higher price that's negotiated.
What do you think about that, Al?
Yeah. And so here's what's interesting. And I don't know that many people know this. We have already forms, documents, and systems set up of waiver of duties, where literally sellers and or buyers can a la carte what services they want an agent to do for them on their behalf. There have been limited service brokerages in the past who did only charge a flat fee just to put the house on the MLS, which means it was essentially a for sale by owner, right? The problem is that, and the reason some of those went away is because when it was on the MLS, the assumption was, oh, this brokerage represents the seller, even though in the comments it would indicate. And so if I reached out to the seller and they didn't answer the phone or they didn't, get back to me for a showing, guess who I'm going to call? That brokerage. And then the brokerage is taking calls. And then if the seller gets an offer and they have a question, and who are they going to call with the question? The brokerage, when they only paid them to be on the MLS. Mm-hmm. And the broker ends up doing more than what they were paid for. And so that model kind of faded only because it's not as clear cut as that, right? The transaction is so integrated. And as the agent, we actually manage it from start to finish, but there's a lot of folks involved. There's the lender, there's the appraiser, the home inspector, the seller, the title company. All these things are happening in these moving pieces that we as agents help sellers and buyers navigate that process because we understand what's coming. We can help them make better decisions as to what's happening right now in whatever stage of the transaction. And so I think a lot of people in the public don't fully understand exactly what we do and what value we bring. So to Gary's also previous point is we will now be forced to express and explain more of what our value is and why we earn the pay that we make, whatever that may be, whether it's through a la carte. But a la carte is not going to be as simple as people think it is, right? Because if I just show you a house and you pay me whatever fee to just show you the house, well, then when you're ready to make an offer and do all of that, there's information we gathered from the showing that needs to be considered in the offer. And why are you making this offer? And what kind of things did we see? And right. And so they're going to come back to me and say, hey, I got a question though. Can you answer this for me? It's like, no, you just pay me to open the door and walk you through and kind of point out some things, but you didn't pay me to do this part. And then, that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how that really goes because it's all so heavily woven together. Yes.
Gary, could this be bad for home buyers in any way? I mean, all the headlines, and I know you'll have some issues with those headlines that were out there, but talked about how this could reduce home prices if commissions were smaller, and it could be good for the market in that way. But could this be bad for home buyers in any way?
I don't see any immediate issue for home buyers unless they end up kind of asking for a set of services that are below what they need. I think choice in general is a good thing for buyers, especially informed choice. And so in my view, I think this is an opportunity for the industry to allow both buyers and sellers to be much more informed about what is what are the opportunities in front of them and so forth. I think where I see changes happening is that I think we're going to have fewer part-time real estate agents who are just kind of doing this on the side. They said, on occasion, I can earn this commission from somebody I know and that sort of thing. I think because they're part-time, they're less professionalized. And I do think the full-service agents will continue to thrive within this market. And in part because there's fewer part-timers taking commissions away from them, they actually, on average, might be doing a little bit better. But I don't see, a loss for buyers. I believe the transparency in terms of information and such will be a positive.
And I think the danger, if there's going to be a danger for buyers, is that, again, if sellers get this notion that I no longer have to assist or kind of roll into this price, this buyer side commission, and buyers end up having to pay out of pocket in addition to closing costs, down payment, and those upfront expenses that most people don't even realize. There's upfront expenses beyond the closing costs and down payment, which can be a couple of $1,000s. And then they have to pay commissions in addition to that. That is going to limit how many folks can buy, right? And prices are already up, which has taken out a lot of average buyers, if you will. And there were programs created for low to moderate income buyers to be able to realize home ownership. Well, the danger is this could roll that back a bit. So,
interesting.
Yes.
Well, lots to talk about here. We might have to talk about this again. I've been talking with ERA, Real Solutions Realty Associate Broker, alrosser, and University of Cincinnati Lindner College of Business Professor of Real Estate, Gary Painter. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate having me.
You've been listening to Cincinnati Edition on 91.7 WVXU. Our producer is Selena Reeder. Associate producer is Asia Johnson. Technical director is Marshall Verbsky. If you miss our program live, you can subscribe to Cincinnati Edition wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Lucy May. Thanks so much for listening.